Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Uh, my name is Busra Khan. Today I would like to present to you uh, about my final year project 1 with the title Performance Comparison Study on Open Source Vulnerability Scanners Against SQL Injection and XSS Attacks under supervised Dr. Maheza Hajjah Muhammad Siraj. First, let's problem background. Injection vulnerabilities nowadays become one of the major threat to application level security, especially when it comes to application that have database such as web application. And because with increasing web usage, it will cause various type of attack over time. And the SQL injection and XSS cross-site scripting have become very famous to exploit the web-based application because the damage they may cause to the victim business. There are many tools that can mitigate this kind of attacks, both commercial and open source. The tool's name is Web Vulnerability Scanners. These tools could scan the vulnerabilities inside a web application and produce a report about their finding. On this research, the author chose the open source because it is free and it has provided the code on their website, so the author can do further analysis on research finding and modifying some of the modify the open source vulnerability scanners. But because there are plenty of open source tools, so people doesn't know which one has the best coverage of detection and false positive. That's why people just use the tool without knowing the best for them, and hackers use this hole where poor programming code creates a big risk for the system and the tools don't detect the system false positive. Research objective. There are 3 research objectives that the author has decided. First one is to identify the existing open source scanner that based on OWASP and Grabber. Second, to conduct testing on web-based systems in terms of fault tolerance on SQL injection and XSS attack. The third one is to compare scanners' performance effectiveness based on vulnerability detection coverage and false positive. Research scope. There are 3 scopes that will cover the research. The first one is research will use web-based system, commercial, government, and finance as for the target. Second one, this research will use open source scanner, OWASP scanner or OWASP Z and Grabber. And there are 3 parameters: speed, precision rate, and vulnerability type in the assessment criteria. There are 5 criteria: missing if call statements, missing function call, and XPR expression used as burn condition, missing if call surrounding statement, and missing small and localized part of algorithm. Research aim. The aim of this research is to study the performance of the open source vulnerability scanners against SQL injection and XSS attack. To support the research aim, the following research questions are asked. What kind of fault pattern can be found in open source vulnerability scanners? This question is asking because to get the data in the detection coverage, so we can know how many vulnerabilities that can be assessed according to the criteria that have been decided. Second, how long the open source vulnerability scanner could find the fault in web-based application. This question is to get the data is asked because to get the data on the speed. So how long the vulnerability scanner would take to scan the entire web application. And finally, we adjust the performance of open source tool if we added any fault type in this research. This question is asked to answer it to support on the false positive. So when the vulnerabilities doesn't match with the criteria, one of the vulnerabilities from the criteria will be injected to the web application, and the scanner will be check it again to see if the vulnerabilities can be found. But before that, the scanner will be modified to uh, add some criteria that have been decided. Next, research contribution. With this research, the author contribute on how to find the best open source vulnerability scanner against SQL injection and process scripting attacks on the market. Based on the research and experiment that the author has done to fulfill the author aims to study the performance of the open source vulnerability scanner against SQL injection and process scripting attacks. Review. There are three journal papers that I have reviewed to decide which is the best methodology that I could use for this research. First one is by Just Fosinka, M. Vieira, and H. Mengueira. Their research title is Testing and Comparing Web Vulnerability Scanner Tools for Escalation and Attack. They create a method where they combine three automated vulnerability scanners. The method has advantages in finding SQL injection and XSS attack because the methodology of our algorithm have fully covered of entire cycle when the experiment is done. And because the author will check it again by hand, so it added extra layer to the analysis part where they not depend solely on the developmental teams. Second one by Sangitaro and Akumar. The research title, a network-based vulnerability scanner for detecting SQL injection attacks in web application. The method is more focused on SQL injection, so the methodology is mainly work on the SQL injection experiment than process scripting attacks. They create different library on different database to increase the efficiency of the vulnerability scanners and can get less positive. So they modify the database. To get less false positive on the scanners. And finally, improving vulnerability scanner performance in detecting Ajax application vulnerabilities by Asnar Kijikoswara and Yidue Dorana Asnar. The main focus of the research is Ajax web application, and the main focus is to improve the vulnerability scanner result through scanning on Ajax web application, especially on the dynamic document object model. They modify an existing vulnerability scanner tools by modifying the crawling process into Ajax crawling. This one is a little bit different with others too, but they help me on modify the scanners because now it can scan the Ajax web application too. This is the advantages and disadvantages. First, the advantages of the first one from the first title. Fully cover entire sector when the experiment is done. Create less room for false positive occur because the researcher do the entire experiment repeatedly until it has less false positive. And can check again manually when the researcher inject the bug into the application if the scanner doesn't scan the new vulnerabilities. The method is not very automated because they need to test the vulnerability by hand in order to make sure the automated vulnerability scanner is having a different result before injecting a new bug. The researcher from the second research, the researcher create different library on different database to increase efficiency of the vulnerability scanners and can get less false positive. The researcher also check the blind SQL injection when they creating different library database. The researcher also created a RMI remote method invocation server that have function to sense the request coming from the firewall system. But its efficiency will depend on how many systems they use it and also how many connections MySQL can support, because for the data, they're using MySQL in the backend. The second disadvantage is the methodology is focused on SQL injection alone, so it is not covered XSS aspect. Their methodology is not specifying a node because their methodology doesn't explain what will happen after the main report, and they cycle only go to the report part, not go to the crawler part if the vulnerability scanner doesn't find vulnerabilities on the web application. And the final title is the advantages is, of course, the vulnerability scanner to do scanning on Ajax web application, especially on the dynamic document object model, and modify the assistive vulnerability scanner tools by modifying the crawling process into Ajax crawling. Disadvantages. The disadvantages of this methodology is not cover the entire process of the vulnerability scanner's tools because it only covers the crawling part, which is the first part. The second one is because of the HTML, JSON, and XML are basically text message. So when an error is occurring, it is usually presented on the form of error message. Research methodology. This is the framework operational of the research methodology. On the first page, to identify the existing open source database on OWASP and Grabber and the characteristic of the SQL attack. On the first page, we find the source in the internet, conference paper, and previous studies and thesis. Then, we study the open source vulnerability scanners and SQL injection and cross-site scripting attacks characteristic, and then find the technique to do the experiment. The output from this phase 1 is characteristic of the vulnerability scanner technique, characteristic of SQL injection and cross-site scripting attacks, on how it works, and then the technique to run the experiments. From the output of the first phase, we conduct the design simulation experiment, and then develop simulation experiment based on the design, where we actually not develop it, but more like modify the scanners to specify the criteria that have been decided, and then test the simulation experiment before run the experiment to get the data. So if there is any error on the experiment, we'll design it again and develop it again. The output from the phase 2 is simulation experiment will be created. The vulnerabilities inside vulnerabilities library will be analyzed, and a pretext experiment will be conducted to test. And finally, the third phase, the experiment will be run. The data that we get from the experiment will be analyzed and compared based on the report that being produced by each of the scanner, and finally make a table comparison based on them. The output of it is experiment will be tested. Each scanner will be tested on a different target. The data will show on the report by each scanner, and the data from the report will be discussed. This is the mind maps of the research methodology. Basically, explain how it works from the framework operational. So the hardware, software, and research approach. For the hardware, the author use MSI GL72M 7RDX 800 with processor Intel Core i7 7700HQ and DDR4 16 GB. And then for the software, first, OWASP is comprehensive security detection platform that are easy to use for bugs in web application. This is standard for users with a variety of safety training needs and suitable for novice hacker and professional customer penetration testing, and is a vital complement to the expert and comfortable box. Technology is Grabber is simple, not quick, but mobile and adaptable. The software has no big application at all, and it will take way too long for your network to search specific research as personal on a forum. And for the research approach, the writer chose to use black box testing for the experiment. Black box testing is a process in which concepts System output, or DUT, is checked without any knowledge of device internal structure, example the hardware, software, and its relationship. So on this research is specifically on software. And for data collection, the writer used data quantitative analysis approach. Quantitative research related to structure and numerically represented data collection and analysis. One of the key objectives is accurate and reliable measurement that make statistical analysis possible. And for the performance measurement, there are three criteria that will be measured: precision rate, speed, and fault vulnerabilities. For the precision rates, it will basically calculate the number of vulnerabilities detected correctly divided by number of vulnerabilities detected correctly plus number of vulnerabilities detected incorrectly, or basically false positive, times 100. So from this number we can guess how precision the vulnerability scanner when scan the web application, because sometimes the scanner will scan the wrong vulnerabilities and it will create a false positive to the analysis. And the second one is speed. Speed is depending on how many pages the scanner needs to scan in order to find vulnerabilities inside web application. This performance can be measured when the writer calculates how long each vulnerability scanner scans each web application from the target area, and compare between the vulnerability scanner. And finally, fault or vulnerabilities. The scanner will be measured on how many vulnerabilities inside that vulnerability library that match with the criteria that have been decided. Research, design, and implementation. This is the overall flow. It first start from open vulnerability scanners, and then it will go to scan the website for SQL injection and cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. And if there is no vulnerability will be found, will be scanned again until it be found. And after it found, we'll compare it with the vulnerabilities inside the criteria. The criteria have been add-ons to the scanners by modifying the library, the vulnerabilities library inside each scanner. For the OWASP ZAP, you can add a new database, but for Grabber, it will do some code modify to specify which vulnerabilities will be scanned. And then if there is a match, if yes, a report. If no, it restores the website. It inject the software bug of vulnerabilities and test the vulnerability by hand, or do the attack manually. And after do attack manually, then the vulnerability scanner will scan the website again until it find and finally make a report, produce a report. This is the design phase. On the first phase, board scanner will scan the entire web page on web application and compare it with the criteria. But if the vulnerability is not inside the criteria, then it will produce a report. On the second phase, the difference is when the vulnerability doesn't match with the criteria, then it will inject a bug that same with the criteria, and the scanner will scan it again. Finally, on the third phase, all the experiments from second phase will be reported on the final report. Then it will compare with the first report, and finally the result will be analyzed. On this phase, also each parameter will be assessed in order to find the best open source scanner between OWASP and Grabber. For the testbed simulation setup, for the hardware part, and laptop is sufficient enough if it has 4 GB of RAM or more, and at least it uses Intel Core i3 or on par with it. The connection bandwidth at least 10 Mbps or more to have stable connection when scanning the entire website. And for the attack simulation part, the Writer will use Kali Linux as the main OS because on Kali Linux there are many tools that can help the writer inject a bug into the web application. And also, usually on the Kali Linux, our Zap application and Grabber usually have been installed on it. And for the software part, the writer will utilize our Zap scanner and Grabber as the open source vulnerability scanner. And then for the web application, the writer will pick each web application from the commercial, government, and financial sector. And for the purpose of neutrality and confidentiality, the writer doesn't tell the name of each web application. And this is the parameter. Speed, the average time is first scan from the first phase and second scan from the total from the final phase, and divide by 2. Precision rate equal to number of vulnerability detected correctly divided by number of vulnerability detected correctly plus number of vulnerabilities detected incorrectly times 100. And for the vulnerabilities type, there are 5 criteria that each scanner must fulfill to get the data. The first type is missing if code statement. The second one is missing function call. The one is an expired expression used as burn condition. The fourth one missing if concerning statement, and final one is missing small and liquid part of algorithm. And outcome of PSM1 and training for PSM2. On the PSM1, the author have achieved the phase 1 research where knowledge on how to solve the research problem. In the phase 1, the author has found the technique, the requirement that could help in running the phase 2 and the phase 3. For the PSM2, the author will run phase 2. The design and develop phase, also the phase 3, where experiment will be conducted to get data to be analyzed and answer research question. Thank you.